Well, good evening, everybody. I want to share a quick thing that happened to me when I first started here. As I started to take on youth ministry, I made a few calls before I got going. I called Arpoka Daniels, who many of you are familiar with, and I also called Clay Bryant, who also many of you are familiar with. And I just need some advice. Help me to wrap my head around what I'm getting myself into. Help me to just understand this a little bit better. Any words of wisdom that you can impart on me. One of them said, just so you know, he goes, the hardest part about the job is the parents. He said, you will love the kids. He goes, in fact, I can't wait until my kids are in the youth group, because then I'll have a set of parents that actually like me. So that was great advice. The other one said, technology will always fail you. Just so you know, if you are relying on technology, it's going to fail you at some point. So always have a hard copy. Okay, that leads me to tonight. So a few days ago, I had finished up my lesson, finished everything that I had prepared. I went to hit print on the printer, and the printer didn't work. So you can't get a hard copy. I don't know if you didn't know this. You cannot get a hard copy if you don't have a printer. I thought about getting a typewriter really quick. That felt like too much work. So we're going to see if technology really does fail me tonight or not. Anyways, on the way here, also I tried to do some conversion of some of my notes over to a different technology as a result. And so I've got it all electronically. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I wanted to share a quick story as we get started tonight. So first of all, if you guys have your Bibles with you, we're going to be in Matthew 6 tonight primarily. But I thought I'd start with a quick story. When I was in my young 20s, I worked actually just down the road here. I worked at State Farm Insurance with my buddy Chad. A lot of you guys know Chad Norton. Him and I were causing a lot of trouble back then, and we decided that we were going to go work there. And there was a new agent at the time. He's not so new anymore. He's kind of an older guy now, but at the time he was fresh into his stint there as the new insurance agent. The old insurance agent had been there for several years. I think he had been there for 20, 30 years. And you know, as you can imagine, if you've been at any kind of job for 20, 30 years and you start to make it your home, you start to have all kinds of items that are sentimental to you. And basically, you know, when you are an insurance agent, it's almost as if you have a second life that exists there in the office. And so when it got to be a time for him to retire and for the new agent to come in, he drug his feet a little bit. And what happened is there ended up being a little bit of overlap between when we started and when he finished. And so as we started to get ready to take on this new venture, what we found out was he had a lot of things that needed moved. And he goes, well, boys, you look like strapping young men. I would love to see if I can hire you. And I was like, well, we have this job. You know, we're supposed to be insurance agents ourselves. And he goes, well, I'll give you X many dollars. And at the time, that probably felt like a lot of money, maybe $10 or something like that. And so, like, you know, we were very excited about this opportunity. And so we started to pack away all of his things. Little did we know there was a lot that we were not prepared to load. Our backs hurt. Even for 20-year-olds, our backs hurt. Here's where it got interesting. About midway through our day, the man's name is Don. Don said, all right, boys, what I need you to do is, can you just go ahead and carry that credenza over there and just go ahead and pack it onto the truck for me? And Chad and I looked at each other as if I said, do you know what a credenza is? He said, I do not. And I said, neither do I. And in our 20s, you know, it felt we didn't want to give the impression that we didn't know. So we just started picking up random things and be like, let's get the credenza, you know, and started picking. In fact, just now you said, hey, do you want to put your stuff on the lectern? And I was like, what is the lectern? I figured that one out. But, you know, at the time, I didn't want to admit that we didn't know what a credenza was. And so by about the fourth or fifth item, he kept on saying, young man, just get the credenza and put it on there. And by about the fourth item, I said, can you just point at it? I don't I don't know what you're talking about. I just want you to point out, and basically what he did was he went ahead and pointed at the desk that was about 3 feet from where I was standing the whole time. And we just didn't have the word for it. It's not that we didn't want to help. It's not that we didn't want to, do something helpful. It's just that we didn't have the word for this credenza. Here's the thing. I don't think that when Don was going through that whole exercise, he was trying to make us feel dumb. I don't think when you said, do you want to put in the lectern, you were trying to make me feel dumb. But in that moment, in our 20s, that's exactly how we felt. One word that was so hard for us to wrap our minds around that we didn't know. And suddenly, Chad and I were on the outside of this conversation, and we were guessing, and we were embarrassed and hoping that he didn't notice. And we did a poor job of hiding it. And I wonder, as people start to become a part of the church, as they start to walk in for the first time, if people ever kind of take on that stance of feeling almost slightly embarrassed or not out of place, looking for words. It got me thinking about Matthew chapter 6, verse 5 through 8. If you have your Bibles with me, let's go ahead and turn there real quick, and we'll look that over. You guys probably know this one. Let's see if I can get there real quick. Matthew 6, verse 5 through 8. Here we go. It says this. It says, when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. I'm going to pause there for a second. But like in that moment, a little part of me felt ashamed, felt like I was embarrassed because I was trying to act it out, act as if I knew what I was talking about. But here it matters way more. You don't want to be an actor in this phase of life. We don't want to portray someone that's coming in looking for God, looking for hope, looking for help, and what they get is a room full of insiders, right? We don't want to convey that message because we know the words. And everybody else, sometimes they're just standing there, like me and Chad were, just nodding along, grabbing the wrong furniture, hoping that nobody notices that they're lost. Here's the thing, is Jesus knew words. Jesus knew what words could do to people. And in Matthew 6, right in the middle of this Sermon on the Mount, what we call the greatest sermon ever given, Jesus starts talking about prayer. And the first thing that he says, he doesn't talk about how to pray. He talks about how not to pray. And that was interesting to me as I started to pay attention to that a little bit more. He's not just talking about how to pray. He begins with how not to pray. He says, when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Now that word hypocrite, that actually resonates a lot with me because in Jesus' day, that word meant something different than the way we typically use it today. It meant something actually pretty specific. It meant actor. It meant a performer. Somebody up on a stage that's playing some kind of part for an audience. That's what Jesus is calling out. He's saying, don't be an actor. He's saying some people pray like they're performing. He said the prayer really isn't for God. It's for somebody that's watching. And I said that resonated with me. It's because I watch how much time my daughter spends when she's putting on a performance, and every movement that she makes is exaggerated. Instead of just having a conversation here, she's very big. She gets very big with everything that she does. And why? Not because she has to. Like when she's talking to me, she talks like this, and she talks very small. But when she's talking in her plays, she's talking very big and very loud and exaggerated. And here's the thing, Jesus isn't against praying in public. Let me make that very, very clear. Jesus isn't against praying in public. He just got done telling us not too long ago to be salt and to be light, to let people see our good works. Jesus isn't saying don't pray where people can see you. That's not what he's advocating for here. He's saying, what's your motivation? He's saying some people pray like they're performing. The prayer isn't really for God. It's for the people that are watching. You know, there's let's see if I can remember this. Yeah. There is a scene, anybody big Pirates of the Caribbean? Or is it Caribbean? Caribbean? You get it. There's a scene in that movie where Elizabeth is trying to negotiate with the Captain Barbosa. And he says, in this interaction, and if you've seen the movie, is pretty interesting. She pulls in this fancy phrase in the middle of all of this. She says, I believe it was something like, I demand a cessation of hostilities. And Barbosa, the pirate in there, kind of shakes his head a little bit, and he doesn't want to be outworded in this moment. And so he fires back in very quick retort. He says, I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request, which is pirate for no. And here's what I want you to think about when you think about that scene is neither one of them is trying to be understood. She's not trying to be understood. Elizabeth, Captain Barbosa, not really interested in being understood. Neither one of them are trying to be understood in that moment. Those big words, those beautiful words, those ones that are enchanting words, that they're not there to communicate to the other person. They're there to win the argument, to posture. They are there to get an upper hand, for lack of better words. And that's what Jesus saw on the street corners. He saw these big, beautiful, impressive prayers, and not one word of them was actually for God. They were for leverage. They were for performance. They were what's about the amount of what my daughter's monologue is. And everybody else got to be the audience. And I just want to point out, when we're praying, when we say prayers, we are praying to an audience of one. Whether that is in a room full of people, or whether that's in a prayer closet, or anything in between, we're praying to an audience of one. And so Jesus says one more thing. He says, when you pray, don't keep on babbling on like the pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Don't be like them. Your Father knows what you need before you even ask it of them. I want to think about that for just a second. Our Father already knows. Pay attention to that. Your Father already knows. And at least what I'm understanding that to mean is God isn't sitting up in heaven to be impressed by your massive vocabulary. He's not grading your grammar, which is fantastic for me. He knows what you need, and he knows what you need before you even began to sit down with that prayer, and before you even began to open up your mouth, he already knows. So that to me raises a question. If God already knows, then who are the words for? I don't know that. And it's just kind of made me sit there. I've had to think about that for a while now. If God already knows, who are the words for? Well, let's hold that question for a minute, because Jesus does something next in the next verses 9 through 13, and you might know this section. He talks to us about how exactly it is that we should pray. Not with an explanation, but he does so with a prayer of his own. He says, this then is how you should pray. And then he gives them he gives us about 50 words, right around 50 words. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And that's it. And that's all. That's the whole thing. I said it, I think, in less than 20 seconds. Now, I want to show you two things about this prayer, because I think when we start to really break this down and understand it, I think that it's going to change the way that we start to think about prayer. And I know that you guys you know this prayer. My daughter knows this prayer. We have kids that are 5, 6 years old that know this prayer. But I want to notice a couple of interesting things about this. First of all, the prayer has two halves. And I didn't notice that until I started to dig a little bit deeper. The prayer has two halves. At the front half, it's all about God. His name. Hallowed be your name. His kingdom. Your kingdom come. His will. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You see, the front half, for lack of better words, is cosmic, is divinity. It's big, it's huge, it's heaven-sized. But then if I look at the back half, you see words like bread and forgiveness and protection. All of a sudden, we're not talking about the cosmos anymore. We're talking about what it's like to have lunch with your buddy. We're talking about that person that you've been avoiding, and maybe you don't necessarily feel comfortable having that sideways conversation and finishing that conversation up. We're talking about temptation that's going to come find you. These are things that are more specific, right? And I don't think that, like, when he was putting this prayer together, that was just a random happenstance. I think he purposely laid it out in this way, in the two halves they did. I think Jesus is showing us where it says kingdom come, he's saying that actually happens. It doesn't happen up in the clouds, no. He says on earth as it is in heaven. It gets worked out here. In the dirt, in the bread, in the daily bread, in forgiveness, in ordinary, boring old life, with ordinary, boring old people, making it through ordinary old days. Now, if you want to see the kingdom come, it doesn't sound like he's saying look up. It's saying like he's saying look across to your neighbor, look across the street. And second, this prayer, I think, is very, very short on purpose. I don't think that was accidental either. Now, in Jesus' day, faithful Jewish people actually prayed a different prayer called the Amidah. I believe that's how you say it, or it's Amida, one of the two, which is also known as the standing prayer. And they prayed that 3 times a day. And it's a big prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. It's a lot of words. In English translation, it runs somewhere around 1,300 words. That, I don't know if you're very good at math, but is a lot more than 50. In that prayer, there's 18 blessings. God's name, God's kingdom, God's provision, God's forgiveness, God's deliverance. It's all in there. In the Amida, it's all in there. It's all covered. But here's what I want you to catch as the difference between the two is Jesus doesn't throw any of that into this, right? Almost everything in the Lord's Prayer, he doesn't throw any of it out of it either. Almost every theme in the Lord's Prayer is also in the Amidah. They're one and the same. It's just like taking a Cliff Notes version of it, for lack of better words. Jesus isn't correcting anything here. He's doing what Jesus always does. He's distilling it. He's making it simple for us peons to understand. Thank goodness. 1,300 words he takes down to 50, like that. The same way that he took, 613 commandments and boiled them down to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Why? Why do you think he does that? Why does he make it short? I don't know if this is a class that we get to talk, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
He wants it easy for us to understand.
Yeah. I think so too. I don't think this was ever meant to be complicated. Now, I think there's complicated things in this. Don't get me wrong. There are things that I sit with and I think about and I rethink about and I rethink about. But I don't think that the whole point of this was for it to be a barrier for entry. I don't think that's what that was made for. Anybody can learn 50 words, yeah? A brand new believer can learn 50 words, yeah? I will tell you, I didn't know this prayer until I got to be into my teenage years.
Another thought, Bill.
Yeah.
You remember also, he's giving this sermon to common, everyday people.
Yeah.
Most of them can't read or write.
Yeah.
So he wants something short that they can memorize.
100%. Yeah, it's a great thought. Basically, he said, hey, this is for the common man. This is for people that have a hard time with reading and writing. And that's, it's a fantastic point. It truly is. It's for the guy who walks into church for the first time, maybe Sunday morning, who doesn't know a credenza from a communion table, right? I don't know if I still could point that out. But they can probably learn 50 words, yeah? And I think the point that he's trying to make here is that nobody has to stand outside of this prayer nodding along. Nobody has to stand outside of this prayer hoping that nobody notices that they're lost. This is an entry point. Jesus is not against long prayers. Don't mishear me when I say that. If you like to pray for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, go for it. I don't think that, there's anything wrong with that either. The Psalms, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So if God gives you words that are eloquent and long, and that's your vernacular, your vocabulary, go for it. But don't do it to be an actor. Don't do it to be a hypocrite, right? Jesus, one thing that he does refuse, one thing that he absolutely refuses is to let prayer become a members-only club. He doesn't want the front door of the Father's house to have a vocabulary test on it. So the prayer, I believe, is short enough for everybody, but that still leaves our question hanging. If God already knows what we need, who are the words for? Did you notice I didn't answer that question yet? Because here's a hint. Let's read that prayer again real quick. It says, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. Did you notice something, that there was no I? There was no me. There was no my. It was all our. It was all us. It's our Father. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us. Every single pronoun in this prayer is plural. And here's what gets me is Jesus taught this prayer knowing full well that most of the time you're going to be praying it alone. By yourself. So why do we have those pronouns instead of give me, give I? What do you think?
and recognize that it's us together, it's us with God.
Yeah. She said it's showing your relationship. It's us with God. Yeah. What else? Any other thoughts on that? In your kitchen before the sun comes up, in the car when you pray this prayer, in a hospital waiting room, even there you're still all by yourself, right? And so Jesus has you praying yet for someone else, right? And that's what I think, part of the point of this is you can't pray this prayer the way that Jesus taught it without carrying your neighbors into it, your families into this, your friends, your enemies into it, right? It's meant for everyone. Now over in Romans 8, Paul tells us something that I think really starts to seal this whole thing. He says, we don't even know what we ought to pray for. Do you remember this? We don't even know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. Wordless groans. Have you ever had one of those prayers where you just go, God, and you just can't put together the word because of a pain, or you just can't articulate what you're going for? The Spirit in that moment is praying for you. He's not using words at all, but he's praying for you in that moment. So I want to go ahead and try to get this all back to the answer that I've been going for this whole time, is God doesn't need our words. The words are not for God, I don't think. He knew what we needed before we asked, right? According to that last thing, we can have wordless groans, and he knew what those words were. The Spirit, does the Spirit need our words? I don't think so. Doesn't seem to be. It says he prays and groans deeper than language. So when Jesus hands us these 50 words that we find in Matthew chapter 6, who are the words for? If they're not for God, then who are they for? Well, I think they're for us. They're for each other. I want to actually try to think about this in two different halves, the same way that it was laid out. In the first half, in the first picture, if you will, everybody's praying. Everybody's praying, but let's imagine everybody in this room is praying, same time, but you're only praying for yourself. My bills, my health, my family, my problems. And listen, are any of those prayers wrong? Not a bit. No, not at all. But I want to really quickly do the math in this room. If I'm looking around, I'm not super great at math. I'm going to guess about 20, 25-ish. Yeah. I want to do that math really quick and understand how does that work out when you're doing the math and you're just praying for yourself, those prayers. Well, I said exactly one prayer for one person, right? Just you. Everybody in this whole building and you are only carrying your name to the Father. Okay, now let's consider a different posture. Let's think about a second picture. Same room, this room, same people, but we are praying the way that Jesus taught. Our Father, forgive us. What does that mean? It means that everybody is carrying everybody's prayers. And now how many people are praying for you in just this one room alone? 20 to 25. Yeah. And now, like, what happens if we extend that past this church and to our other brothers and sisters are 5 miles this way at Eastside, or 5 miles this way at Del City, or a few more miles at Oakdale? I mean, you're talking about dozens at that point. You're talking about hundreds, potentially thousands, and we're talking about within a 10, 15-mile radius. That's big. That is huge. You're being lifted up by name in kitchens all across town. And you're doing it before the sun comes up, if we're praying the way that Jesus is asking us to pray. And here's what happens is a lot of things happen in a church like that, because you can't pray for somebody very long without wanting to know, what are you doing? Tell me about your life. I would love to get to know more about you. You start asking questions. You start listening. When you start praying for daily bread can turn into a casserole. Praying about debts turns into a hard, good conversation that you might have been putting off for a lot of years. And praying deliver us might turn into sitting with somebody in the worst work of their life. The prayer doesn't just talk about the kingdom coming, the prayer brings it on earth as it is in heaven. I want to share with you a story that happened to me on the way here. A friend of mine, he's had a rough go. He's had a rough life. He is maybe a couple years older than I am. He's lost his mom. He's lost his father. He's lost his brother that was my age. He's lost his sister. He basically has no one that's within his close family. And I look at him, I'm like, you're Job, brother. You are Job. And he wrote me a question today. He goes, hey, if you could fight one person, who would it be? It's a random question. I said, Skip Bayless. I don't know if you know who Skip Bayless is. He's a sportscaster. I don't know why. That's where I landed for whatever reason today. I was like, Skip Bayless. And he goes, I think I need to wrestle with God for a little bit. And painful to hear. Until I considered it for a moment, I said, you know what, buddy? Jacob wrestled with God too. And he didn't come out of it the same way. He came out of it with a limp. He came out hurt as a result. But he came out. And he said, I started the conversation by just saying, why would you say that as your answer? And he said, I just feel like I need to wrestle, with him a little bit. And I was like, man, if you're wrestling, at least you're staying close to him, So yeah, keep on wrestling. I was like, but no, I mentioned Jacob. And I said, the one thing that you don't hear a lot about in Jacob's story is that his family was, just across the river. And I said, your family, your immediate family is not with you anymore. I was like, but I've known you since I was 10. And I said, so we can't fight that fight with you, but we can be just across the river for you. He knows we're praying for him. And I think about, not just me, but, my wife prays for him. He's got other friends and family that are praying for him. And that's what somebody needs in these times of life. It's what the church needs too. They need that constant prayer. The prayer doesn't just talk about the kingdom coming. The prayer brings the kingdom coming on earth as it is in heaven. Right here. Then I think about that credenza. It was just 3 feet away. When I think about who the words were for, and the words being for us, it was used to shape our hearts until they start to look a lot like the Father's heart was meant to look. And what does the Father want? What's the Father want? More than anything.
He wants us to talk to him.
He wants us to talk to him. Why does he want us to talk to him?
Because that way we have a relationship with him.
Okay. Because that way we have a relationship with him. Why would he want us to have a relationship with him? I want to keep digging. Because we're his children. Where do children belong?
With the Father.
Home.
Their parent.
They belong home. I can tell you that if my child does not come home today, there's going to be a problem. We're going to be very scared. We're going to be very concerned. And we want him to talk, we want them to talk to us, to have a relationship with us, but all of those things, we want them home. And I don't think the relationship with the Father is any different. He wants his kids home. He wants reconciliation. He wants nobody standing outside the door because the language felt like a members-only club. Because here's the thing about me and Chad and the credenza, as we spent all morning. We spent all morning when we were lost and we were embarrassed and we were guessing, and the whole time we were standing right next to it, 3 feet away. We just didn't have the word. If you didn't hear anything that I said, hear this. There are people that are all over Midwest City right now that are standing 3 feet from the Father. They've been here. They've been near him. They've been here the whole time. Near the church, near the Bible, right? They might have been at their grandma's, looking at grandma's shelf and seeing the Bible right there, right in front of them. And they need you. They need somebody that's going to pray. They need somebody that isn't far away. They need somebody that doesn't have fancy words, eloquent words. They don't have the words. And nobody ever pointed it out. And when somebody doesn't have the word and nobody points it out, I feel like we're guilty. Church, at church, we know the words. We know these 50 words. It's short enough for, I'm looking around this room, short enough for a grandkid to learn, but it's big enough to carry the whole kingdom, right? So I think it's important that we be the people, just like Don for us did when he pointed out the credenza. I think it's so important that we say, let me point you to Matthew 6, verse 9 through 12. And we're going to read this together, and we're going to talk about the two halves, and we're going to talk about not just why it's important to me, but why it's important to you, and why it's important to us. It's my lesson today. But I felt like, before we got out of here, I should stop with one thing. I think we should start with a prayer. Let's pray. Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Pray that you give us this bread, our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespassers, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. And the church said, amen. Thank you.